Welcome to Buildings and Beyond,
the podcast that explores how we can create a more sustainable built environment
by focusing on efficiency, accessibility, and health.
I'm Rob Aldrich.
And I'm Kelly Westby.
Hey guys, Alex Mirabili here, Buildings and Beyond producer and editor. In response to the positive feedback we received following our recent roundtable discussion, we're making a push to include more voices in our episodes. We hope this results in a less formal, more conversational format, allowing our listeners to hear a wider diversity of perspectives and opinions. On this episode, Kelly chats with Jonathan Rodnite and Adam Romano about building operations and training. Jonathan comes from an operations side of things, working for SL Green Realty as an assistant chief engineer. Adam comes from the training side, utilizing his experience as an engineer to help building operators improve the operations and efficiency of their buildings. Some of my favorite highlights from the conversation with Adam and Jonathan include hearing their perspectives as to why training is so critical in today's environment, hearing their favorite stories from the field, and hearing their advice for others who are looking to enter the workforce. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Here's your host, Kelly Westby.
All right. Well, welcome, Jonathan and Adam, to the podcast. It's great to see you guys today.
Thank you. Likewise, yes.
I'll let you guys introduce yourself. So, Adam, why don't you go first?
Sure.
Give our audience a little background.
Yeah, so my name is Adam Romano. I am a principal building systems consultant with SWA. I've been in the industry almost 18 years now. Started off as an HVAC contractor and kind of moonlighted as a home builder for a little while there until the housing market kind of dropped out in 2008. And then found my way into energy efficiency and consulting, and have been there ever since for the past 15 years, and spent a good time of those 15 years delivering training. So been all over the country, a couple other countries delivering training, and really enjoy it. So I'm glad we're talking about building operations and maintenance training during this podcast.
Yeah, and Adam, your training covers architects, engineers, contractors, building operators, internal staff.
Right, everything. And through the last 15 years it's been a lot of that. So every sort of, subset of that, and it's been really, really, really great. One of the things I'm really passionate about is building operations and maintenance training, because I feel like there's a real big need to make sure that the folks that are dealing with operations and maintenance are trained, especially as we start to see new technology come into play. We start to put new controls. So I think there's a good need there. So I'm very happy to be providing that.
Excellent. And
Awesome.
Jonathan, what about you?
Well, my name is Jonathan Rodnite. I have been in the commercial real estate business now for 10 years with the same company of SL Green Realty. Started off as a 32 BJ handyman, startup engineer, worked my way up to an engineer in Local 94. And a few years after that, I got promoted to assistant chief, where I reside now in my 125 Park Avenue property. I'm a very proud engineer. I've taken this business very seriously since I've been in it. Learned a lot. I was able to be a part of a lot of projects, a lot of upgrades, and work with a lot of great guys that taught me a lot along the way. Without them, I don't know if I'd be here today, but I am very fortunate to have the blessing of them behind me and tutoring and mentoring. And typical guys like Adam who want to teach is how I aspire to teach. And I think that's what this business does need, in commercial property. Things are changing constantly. And being now we face the post-pandemic COVID world, we have to now learn a whole new phase of life when it comes to this. It's going to be different, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But this industry does need some good training. It does need some good training.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So we have a little boots on the ground. We have someone who spent their career in training. So I think we're going to have a pretty good episode on building operations and operator training. Let's kind of just get into the heart of it. How does staff training really influence building performance and efficiency? I would say, Adam, let's start with you.
Yeah. So, I think so as an engineer, as a consultant, as we're implementing new technology in buildings or upgrading systems, the heart of that, savings that we're estimating is going to be, based on, can that system be maintained properly, by the operations and maintenance professionals. And, we want to make sure that, the transfer of knowledge is there from the contractors that are installing these systems to the operations operation staff that are designed with, or tasked with maintaining these systems. So it is paramount, because I've seen during my career, systems that are designed to, achieve X or Y savings, not achieve that, because of operational deficiencies, because that transfer of knowledge wasn't there, and systems put in bypass, or are not not maintained properly, and all of the savings that we're estimating, it doesn't come to fruition. So I think it's a key, especially, and it's something that's often overlooked, that is that transfer of knowledge, that training there.
Yeah, there's almost the assumption that it's going to happen, that
right.
I calculated the savings in my spreadsheet, and so it's just going to happen. But,
right.
Jonathan and his folks on the ground are the ones that are really going to save the day or not. So, Jonathan, how do you make sure that you are getting the training you need to, make sure your building performs efficiently? Or where are opportunities where you saw maybe the ball dropped in your... I mean, you don't have to name any names.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree with Adam anymore, because you're right. The system on paper is designed to operate a certain way where you expect the efficiency to level out where the money is, where you're saving, correct?
Yeah.
Some engineers who aren't taught properly, or who are taught one certain way and they don't want to advance, they're only going to do one type of work, and that's how it works, right? They don't want to step outside those guidelines, because that's where people, in my opinion, feel uncomfortable, right? Testing the waters. They don't want to mess something up. But in my opinion, that's how you learn. And at the end of the day, working on this equipment, making it more efficient is what we should be doing, right? And preventative maintenance is key when it comes to that, because a lot of stuff is going to break. We all understand nothing lasts forever. If that was the case, a lot of companies would be out of business. So when things are showing signs of wear and tear, it's actually creating more energy to run if the shaft is a little bent, right? Or if a compressor isn't running effectively or efficiently, you're going to spend more in energy to keep it going. But at the end of the day, it's eventually going to break. So for me, key is understanding the signs, right? You're going to see a piece of equipment when it's being installed by a contractor, and they'll give you a basic rundown. Hey, if you hear some kind of odd sounds, or if you see this looking a little wonky, this is where you should be paying attention to, right?
Yeah.
So people like, guys like me in the field who are operating this equipment effectively every day, it's always a telltale sign you're looking for. Sometimes it's a sound, it's a vibration, or you just know when it's audibly not going correctly. So the training that I think needs to be in place is, year-round training for our guys, right? Every couple of months, give a little refresher course, have someone from the outside source come in. Hey, are you comfortable with this piece of equipment? If you're not, give me some instances where you had troubles, and see how we can troubleshoot it together.
Yeah.
Because that's all it comes down to, is training.
Well, especially with new technology, right? So you're starting to see new systems going in that maybe are a little bit more sensitive to lack of maintenance. You had old boilers that were in there for 40, 50, 60 years that were just like, they were the go-to. Like, you didn't have to really maintain them that much. Like, you had to do maintenance, obviously, but they were a little bit more, they were more resilient, right? So now you have systems where you have to replace this, you have to replace that, you have to maintain this, right? So now you have to do it, because if you don't do it, you're now compromising the entire system. So I think that's part of it as well, is that as we start to achieve greater efficiency, we're also seeing that the necessity, the need for maintenance is now increasing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're much more. It seems like things are much more sensitive to improper installation, improper maintenance. Everything is a computer now. Everything has 10,000 sensors that it's running off of. And so you can optimize it, but if one of those sensors is off, you're not optimizing it. You're whatever the opposite of that is. You're destroying it, I guess.
True story. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what it's there for, honestly. When those systems are designed with some sort of safeties or some sort of temperature sensors, pressure sensors, if they're a little off, your system's a little off. And over time, that little margin becomes a larger margin. And with property management or corp is asking these questions, why is it like this? Everyone's afraid to say the maintenance portion. For sure, everyone's afraid to say, I didn't take care of the equipment as I should. But at the end of the day, they probably didn't have the training, or if they didn't understand something, they were afraid to ask a question. Those are types of, for what I see in the industry, a lot of guys fall into that category. They're just afraid to mess something up, or they're afraid to ask a question because they don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about, because they wear the engineer's shirt, right? They expect to know where everything is and how things operate. But at the end of the day, when you take pride in what you do, like anything else, you don't know it all, but if you're willing to learn, someone's going to teach you at the end of the day. It's like that. There's guys out there that will teach.
Yeah. And you talked about, the training kind of refresher courses, Adam talks a lot about just-in-time training. Like, you don't need training 6 months before you're going to change a filter or blow down a boiler or whatever. You need it 30 seconds before. So how are you seeing that in the field? Like, how are guys getting that training when they need it?
How I'm seeing is we go to the almighty YouTube, right? Because there's a lot of something on YouTube that's going to give you a little, it's going to give you a starting point, right? That's how it goes nowadays. But if there was an app or if there was a service provided where they can, anything that's could be specialized to their equipment, right? If a company could design something like that, make a go-to menu, right? If you're having some minor issues or major issues, it's a good starting point because that's what everyone needs. It's somewhere to start. Everyone's afraid, like, I don't know where to look. But if they had some sort of capabilities of an app or a site where they can just go to as a reference, it would be beneficial to everyone. And you don't need it every year. You have a problem. You could have every other month an issue, and you could revert to it where it's beneficial. And you're always learning something when things break, for sure. You're always learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it can be hard to find the manuals if it's an older piece of equipment. I mean, we talked about newer, but at least, usually you can find the manual somewhere. But the older equipment, I can't even read the label anymore. The company is out of business, or hopefully not.
Yeah,
and even navigating the menus. I mean, or the manuals. I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to comprehend what they're trying to get across. I mean, the pictures may not be great. It may not be maybe the manual covers 5 different types of equipment from different sizes, and maybe there's little differences here and there. So like, there's nothing like a video that really can show you step by step on how to do this. I mean, not to say it's it's a replacement for the manual, but I think it's definitely very, very helpful to really see how someone is doing this and how you can actually replicate that.
Yeah, it's funny with I talk a lot about VRF, but the and the trouble that we run into sometimes. And there's definitely been things where I'm like, where in the manual does it say this? And it's like, oh, no, you have to call Japan, and they have the secret dip switch setting.
Yeah, right. It's
like,
in there.
What secret dip switch setting? That's weird. And so you also mentioned a little bit Local 94. The union has a lot of training. Can you talk a little bit about what they offer and how it's been helping you or everybody else?
So they made it a mandatory 5-unit course that every new engineer that goes into who has initiated to unit to take their courses, which that mandatory is absolutely wonderful. I will say I learned it's a 3-year course when you could, by all said and done, when you complete it.
Right.
You're getting a lot of information from the instructors because they're giving you their hands-on experience. Now, maybe not every day you're going to find something new or exciting, but for someone else in the class, they might take that information and run with it, right? So I learned a lot. I gravitated a lot to the instructors there where they were giving me one-on-one tutorials or education on how I can troubleshoot things or where to even begin. They come from a background of knowledge. So anyone who steps foot in that course, in that training center, you're going to walk out of there more knowledgeable than you did when you walked in. So I recommend anyone who's in the business, get the training. It doesn't hurt. You can only level up from there. And I guess knowledge is power in this business. The more you know, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the are you seeing that all the trainers that you get there then have that operator background?
Yeah, correct. Some start off as helpers in the business, if I'm dating them back in the day, and they gravitate to a chief or a super chief position. Some became property managers. So they work their way up the engine room to a corporate level. So they've been there. They'll understand the blue collar side and the white collar side. Because what I understand on the blue collar side, I don't get now that I'm learning the white collar side. It's a whole different ballgame. You're learning them both now, right? I got to learn politics. I got to learn money and budgets and things of that nature. And that's the interesting side of it because that's all new to me. I could do hands-on experience as I'm still learning, but learning the white collar portion of it, they give you that. Now, the instructor I have right now in my indoor air quality class that I'm taking, he retired now, super chief for 30-something years. The guy just knows it all. He's been opening buildings for actual living, and he's just good at it to the point where he could just close his eyes and tell you exactly what it is. So I pick his brain all the time.
And that's invaluable. I mean, to have someone like that to really, to train you, to someone who has that experience to say, hey, I've been in that situation. I know exactly what you're going through. And I went down this road and it was wrong. I went down this road and it was wrong. But I went down that road and it was right. Like, how do you diagnose, these issues? And because there's so many variables, right? When you look at a system, so like having someone like that that's been there to say, hey, these are the pitfalls. These are the issues that you may come across. And this is, what you should do. Because, navigating that is always the hardest thing, what I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even the like sounds and feels, like I feel like folks who have been in the business for a long time, it's like, oh, no, that noise means this. That noise means this. And that you can't get really from a YouTube video. It's not the same.
No.
You definitely can't get it from a manual. So those are really helpful, I think.
Absolutely. Audible is very sensitive, right? When you walk in, you could tell right away, especially if you have steam in your building, you have a leak. You're like, you go like that, you look around, you're like, there it is. You find it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Using all your senses as an operator. I like that. And what challenges are you both seeing? Adam, I think you alluded to it a little bit before, but
sure.
There's a lot of new technology in buildings, a lot of these mandates in terms of electrification for new buildings, in terms of, reducing your carbon emissions for existing buildings. What kind of pressure is this putting on current operators, and what more kind of training does everybody need?
Yeah, I mean, so from what I've seen, it started off, it's always been that way. Technology is always advancing. And, it was, about a decade ago, we started to really get into energy management systems. And, before then, they were there, boiler controls, things like that. They were switches on the wall. And the operator had a good understanding of how to manipulate that, to diagnose issues, to go ahead and, try to diagnose what's going on. And then, you started to see, now they became more of a little bit like of a black box, in a sense, where now there's, it's more digital. You have to really now understand how to, access a web platform to be able to go in and make adjustments and things like that. So that happens sometimes in the industry. And I see that, and then there's a need for training for that, because then you really need to upskill that existing workforce to say, okay, well, this is the benefit of, what's been done. Like, the controls that are being, sort of implemented. This is how you can navigate that. And I think, back to Jonathan, what he was saying is really, saying when you don't understand something and saying, hey, I would like more information on this, as opposed to really saying, I know how it works, I get it. But then you really don't know how to really, diagnose any issues or to really operate that correctly. So I think it's admitting you need, training and trying to seek that out. But as we start to see new technology come into play, I see that happening again, as we move towards more electric-based systems. Now we're getting away from the sort of the familiar burners and boilers that we have in our buildings, and we're moving towards more, heat pumps and electric-based systems, which now have, relays and capacitors and contactors and diode bridges and all these different things that now we have to, as operators, really understand, how do I, make sure that's working correctly? How do I diagnose a problem? What do I do? When do I call in a contractor? When do I know that it's beyond what I can do as an operator? And when do I need help to bring someone else in to do that? So I see the need for training just only increasing as we start to move towards, new technology.
And Jonathan, as Adam was saying this, I'm curious, because I definitely, from the construction side, see issues when systems are overlapping with different contractors, like plumbing, electrical, controls, all in one. If it's a heat pump, domestic hot water system, now you got plumbing and you got mechanical. And do you see those issues across lines kind of on the operations field? Like maybe you don't have the electrical expertise in-house, or maybe you have guys that are more focused on electrical versus plumbing. How do you see that happen once you turn it over to operations?
That's a very good question, because I'm in the plumbing background. I had that as a skill set prior to being an engineer. So I always pride myself on handling that. Electrically, I've only gotten better, right? I'm not the best at it, but I can always learn. But I have my chief who's very knowledgeable of electricity, right? He understands all the components and how it breaks down and how to make repairs. Not necessarily saying he could always make the repairs. He's an older gentleman. He's probably like, I'm not going to risk it. We'll call in somebody. So we do take a small level of chance to make small repairs. But if we see things getting like above and beyond or something that's way out of our hand of handling, we always outsource that work. But we always try to take the first stab at it. I think that's just how we as a group and as an engineer, you're going to learn by putting yourself in that position to try. And if all else fails, we're still calling a contractor that's going to be qualified, right, and competent to come in and make that necessary repair to get it back online. Because in an emergency sense, you always want to be prepared to get it back online fast and quickly as possible, especially if it's heating in the wintertime, right? You can't leave my building unoccupied without heating because it's not a good look.
No.
Well, exactly, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that you have to take the first stab at it, and to be able to feel empowered to be able to do that, I think is also part of that training. Is that you come out with that sort of empowerment that okay, I can take that first stab. I know what I can do. I can look at X, Y, or Z because those are maybe the most common issues that you find. And then if it is beyond that, then you bring someone else in. But at least maybe 90% of the time it is that and you can get the building back online and you can get it going. And I think that's important. It's to not feel sort of intimidated by the systems. I think that's also part of the training is to really feel like you're empowered that you can really do this.
Yep.
And safety comes up too, right? You mentioned electrical. We've all seen the videos, the warning videos on electrical, right? So, at least knowing where you could run into issues if you start to poke around and start to open up.
Right.
And so having that knowledge or that background to know when, you're getting to the edge, like Adam said, and maybe you should call a friend.
True story.
Yeah.
It's a very good point to make. It's definitely in training. If you're not 100% sure or comfortable working with someone that could hurt you, listen, take a step back. It's all right. We'll get it on. I don't want anyone to get hurt. So you're right about that. Taking safety measures is critical when you're assessing any kind of especially electrical problem, right?
Right.
And you mentioned in the beginning also, COVID, obviously we've all noticed that happened. Buildings are opening back up. I don't know. Some days it seems like we have a lot of people in, some days we don't. What kinds of things are you being asked that are different than before COVID? Or I'm thinking health-wise, are you getting a lot more questions around that from?
So a lot of our tenants, we have Pandora as a tenant, and they made us sign like a disclosure that we can't walk into their space without a mask on because they have their employees all vaccinated. It's all politics now, right? I got to play this game. I don't want to walk into a space and feel uncomfortable either because if they have no mask on, I got to wear it. I don't mind. It's the time we live in, right? Okay. So everything under a health perspective has changed as far as what I've understood years ago. But I don't mind it, to be honest. I think it's a safer bet for everybody.
Yeah.
Until we get through this, let's just play the game. Let's play it smart. And everyone in New York City is on board with that. I got to say, I don't have many issues with my tenants that don't comply, at least with them wearing their own masks. So it's just, as the times go on, it's going to change. But for now, it's not terrible. It's all about, the person you're dealing with at the end of the day, right? As long as they're cool, we're all cool.
Yeah. Does anyone call you up now and say, what MERV are these filters? Or is the fresh air damper open or something?
In the beginning, we did have some tenants that were very curious to see how we were taking measures. And of course, I told them what we were doing. And if it went over their head, which I'm sure it did, they were like, "Oh, thank you." As long as there was a plan in place, they were happy. If I would have said no, nothing, they would have been like, "Oh, well, I'm going to get on the phone and call somebody about this." But they were happy to see that we had at least a response, and they felt comfortable with us. And they see us every day, so as long as they see a familiar face giving them an answer, they're happy.
Yeah, and you mentioned you took an indoor air quality class. So has that helped you, with all of this?
Let me tell you, I'm learning about VOCs. You guys ever heard of this? VOCs. Yes. So, VOCs are now, in my mind, dangerous, right? Because they're on everything. They're on all commercial building materials, right? They're off-gassed. Now I'm learning about off-gassing. And I have a construction floor on the site. I have a construction floor going on right now. As soon as you walk off the elevator, you could smell it. You could smell paint. Right. You could smell glue tile applied. Right? You could smell everything. And I go, that's VOC. That's a VOC. And I got my mask on. I walk around thinking, hopefully this is protecting me, right? But learning about that now, I didn't wear a mask before the pandemic on construction floors, but going forward, no pandemic. I was rocking a mask because you don't know. It's invisible. You can't see it. You can smell it. That's how you know it's bad. but everything off gases. So learning about that in my indoor air quality class that I'm taking now is very beneficial to my career. I will respect it now going forward more than I did in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny that you are at least more paranoid now than before.
You gotta be. It's health safety now. We were always trained on asbestos in my career. Everyone is always trained on asbestos, and then you have a respect for it. But they don't say anything about VOCs. You don't say anything about that.
Then you have training courses. I like that, the respect for the asbestos.
Yeah, they're like, you won't get sick now, but in like 10 years.
Kill me.
In like 15 years, you might develop a cough. Don't worry about that. I was like, wait, what? 15 years? But learning about VOCs, I go, all right, got it. And it stands for a volatile compound.
Organic
compound, excuse me. Yeah, there you go.
You got it. All right. That's funny because we also did an episode on, we've done a couple episodes talking about kitchen ventilation, and like gas stoves are also really bad for your health and indoor air quality. And if you don't have a good exhaust system, which I don't in my 1916 house, it's also really bad. So every time I turn on the stove, I think, damn, I really need to get an induction stove, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, there it is.
No, there's so
knowledge
much,
is power, but also anxiety.
Well, exactly. Yeah, right. Knowledge is power, but it's also power. Like, oh, yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't know my range hood needed to cover the front burners as well.
It's just enough, right? It looks just enough.
And so you were mentioning to us before, you have quite a big crew over there with you, Jonathan. And have you found it hard to train staff and onboard staff? We're obviously, the industry seems to be growing in general, and everybody's trying to find talent. And how are things going with you?
Some days are simple, right? Some days, depending on the problem we're having, we'll address it as a team and we can get through it. But then there's certain days where I might even be stumped, and we're all looking at the chief like, all right, direct us, like give us some knowledge of where to go, what to do. And it's always how we delegate it to our crew. And everyone's sensitive to certain things. You got to be, you got to play the fine line of everyone's ability to learn. So I just because I get it the first day doesn't mean my partner's going to get it the first day. So training guys is my forte now. I'm getting better at it because now that I understand my crew, I'm able to navigate it through working with them easily when it comes to training. But some days, like I said, this might be a little bit difficult with plumbing. I got all my guys squared away. They're pretty familiar now with basic plumbing repairs, and we're going into bigger jobs. We changed a bunch of valves this year, a bunch of globe and gate valves, a lot larger, 4-inch big boy flange one. So it was their first time doing it, and working with me, we all accomplished it on the first shot, and I let them do the work. So they got a lot of hands-on experience when it comes to that. Electrically, we're all still learning. I'm still learning myself, but we do tackle a lot of jobs. We do tackle, like I said, it all depends on the guy and how I train them independently or as a group. Everyone's able to learn anything, if you ask me. It's just how do you get the information across.
Well, that's great to see. I mean, it's great to see that you have this mentoring component built in. I think that's important because it's not, you can learn things in a classroom, you can watch a video, but it's nothing like actually doing it yourself and then having someone there next to you saying, "Hey, okay, do this, do that. This is what you're doing wrong." I think that's super important. So, like, I'm really impressed to see that you have this mentoring, sort of process built in because I feel like that's where really it's the most impactful. A lot of times.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do take pride in my ability to do that. Because I enjoy it, first and foremost. I really do enjoy it. So with just that, having as a background in my ability, to me, it's not really work. Like I said, I enjoy it. So for them, I hope they grasp it like I do.
We'll have them on the podcast next week. No.
Yeah, let's do it. They'll jump on.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think, that's like the best kind of in-time training, right? Just in-time training. It's like Jonathan coming around the corner. Hey guys, how's that going with that?
You need me to do a video. I'm available. I'll make a video for you guys any day. Any day.
That's cool. And what about actually hiring new staff? How often are you, onboarding new staff from off the street or?
So as of now, we have one position available. It's a 32 BJ spot. It's a 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, which is a very critical shift because you're going to be by yourself a good amount of hours without any kind of managerial supervision.
Right.
So that one, you got to just feel comfortable in the event that something happens at 8 o'clock at night. that, yeah, you can call me as long as you understand the direction I'm giving you. Can you handle it at that point? Because people get nervous. You understand emotions do come in when emergencies start happening.
Yeah.
But you got to find that competent person. So for this particular shift that we're going to interview for, it's more or less, are they confident in their ability to handle things on their own, right? I don't need them to be an expert at anything. I'm not asking for that. If that they do bring that to the table, that's an added bonus on their end. But I need someone who's competent, right? Who's capable of handling a specific job detail at night or an event of emergency. How are you handling it? What is your direction? And then we're going to find out from them, see how they would handle themselves under pressure, because everyone's going to give us, their version. I'm just curious to see what their versions are at this point. But competency is very much a key role in the 2 to 11 shift. But during the day, if that event does open up where we get a day guy coming in, I need to know how versed they are with tenants, right? How comfortable they are in tenant space, how comfortable they are talking to, because customer service in SL Green is very big. Yeah. So we don't need anyone who's arrogant, right? We don't want anyone who's over the top or an ego trip. We just want respectful characters coming on board, and they'll learn. Absolutely, when things happen, we tackle as a team, and we all learn. So in the event that I just need a character with a personality, who's down to earth, put a smile on, how's it going, and handle the jobs at hand. If they could work on their own, then that's also an added bonus.
And that's what I hear from a lot of folks I work with, is sort of like, I just need someone who's, go-getter, someone who's really going to be, willing to learn, willing to really get in there and has a good work ethic, and because that's what we're seeing right now is that, with the skilled trades gap and in the industry as it is, where we don't have a lot of skilled workers, really taking the initiative to say, okay, I want to get into this field, and there's a lack of skilled trades. There, contractors, building operations, folks, we're kind of, we're looking for that. We're looking for someone who I could just teach. Who can I mold? Who can I grab? And I can say, okay, well, you have a good work ethic. Let me bring you in here. Let me, Jonathan, come in and show you how to do it. And, and then teach you how to do it the right way. And really to learn those best practices, right? Because you're going to teach them the right way. And that's something that is super important, is to make sure that, we're not learning, bad practices. We're learning the best practices as we're doing things, and we're getting into the field. So that's something that, I think is critical, is to be able to do that. Yeah.
Humble, taking ownership. Yeah, that sounds like what I'm looking for as well. So
yeah.
No one's asking anyone to be an expert, right? It's not. You'll learn. You'll be an expert within time. It's not that difficult if you put your mind to it, right? But the personality is key. Personality is key.
And I find that sometimes it's hard to get that technical, competency from just questions in an interview. What's your go-to interview question to get at that technical competency?
I like this, especially for refrigeration. I'm always going to ask about a safety. All right, I like to know how they would handle if they walked into a mechanical room and you have a unit go off on high head pressure. What are you looking for? What you're going to tell me? If you see a unit that's tripped out, how do you approach that now, right? And I see there's more than one excuse or reason why that tripped out. And I like to hear their feedback, because that tells me that they understand the system. They understand where to even begin to look. Because now if I have to go and do it, you better be learning with me, right? Because I'm showing you, symptoms or signs of why we're going off on high head. And going off safeties alone are going to give you a nice indication of the system layout and how it operates. So basically a safety question on an interview for refrigeration I go to, and electrically, right? I'll go with that. Like, how do you handle anything electrically based? And if they go the safety approach, that's my guy. I appreciate it, a safety response any day of the week, because that shows me that you care, that you don't want to get hurt or hurt anyone else around you. Right?
Yeah.
And that deep understanding, like you said, to really understand why a refrigeration system goes off on high head, you really need to understand how the vapor compression cycle works. What's going on at that condensing coil, what's happening there. So you really do need to have that intimate knowledge. So that is great. That's a great question, because it really does kind of tease out do they really understand the core competencies that they should be understanding.
Yep, exactly. If you go to school for refrigeration, they're going to teach you that there. So I mean, you got a knowledge of it from school, you can bring it right on board here, and then we'll go from that point, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I love your point about, do they have an idea of the multiple reasons why that could be the case? We also look for, did you have a strong stance on something that might have been the right answer, but it wouldn't have been known. Like there maybe were multiple answers to that question. Like, and did you say like, no, it's definitely this. So having that more like curious attitude.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're going to give you what their feedback is. And at that point, you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Maybe that is true. Right. And you start going back to the books because you don't want to look wrong. You're like,
Yeah.
But there's always more than one reason for anything while things break. Or go off on safety. So.
Yeah.
It shows that they show initiative and caring.
Well, it's that inquisitiveness, right? That's important, right? To be inquisitive, to really, that's diagnostics, right? You need to be able to have that like, under like sort of like, nagging, sort of feeling like I got to fix this. I got to solve this, and that's it plagues some people,
yeah.
but it's something that's important though. Like that, I think that's really, is when you find someone like that, I think that's super special.
True story. I couldn't agree with you more, Adam.
And it's funny that you were saying like something that nagged you. Like, do you stay up at night wondering about why your compressor failed? Like, yes, I do.
In this line of work, sometimes things stump you and you're like, what could it? And you won't think about it till you're laying in bed. You're right. It happens. Exactly. It actually comes to mind when you're like, oh my God, I couldn't believe I didn't check that. It's true. When you least expected it hits you. Not under pressure though.
That's funny. Do you dream about safety switches going off in your
I don't
building?
want to, no, because that's a problem. If those are going off, I'm like, no, that's a nightmare now. That became a nightmare.
Like, what would you give as advice to, anybody who's listening here and wants a job with Jonathan? He sounds like he's very dedicated to onboarding and training you. So definitely reach out. And for every other kind of new hire, just in the industry at large, particularly in building operations, what would you recommend to them?
So an instructor gave me this bit of advice. He says, just care. If you really want to get good in this business, just care. Because at that point, if something's broken or if something needs to be addressed and you care enough to do it, you're going to learn in that whole experience of whatever it is. It could be some basic or it could be something more advanced. If you just care in this business, you will elevate because it's going to force you to be uncomfortable in certain situations. But at that point, you're already invested. And at that point, you're just going to continue to learn and grow. So if anyone really wants a good piece of advice in this business, just care. And then your instincts and intuitions will take over and you'll understand and you'll start to learn. I
love that. That's so simple.
Keep it that way, right? It's not that difficult. Anyone can learn anything. I'm a product of that. I'm self-taught. So with help from others, but I took on that initiative to learn.
Yeah. And what you mentioned a couple times being proud of the training efforts. What are some of your proudest moments as a building operator?
A few times we had some emergency-based problems. We had we had a transfer switch that blew out for my first property in the middle of a Saturday night.
Oh my gosh.
Lost the whole building. We had an emergency backup generator that kicked on. Thank God it worked. But us having to come in, right, and handle that. And we had our director of engineering at the time who supervised all of us under that kind of, project that was going on. And just having him sit there alone was a little bit of added pressure. That's, in my opinion, I was like, oh man, I hope he doesn't say anything, poor about us. But we went above and beyond naturally. And not because he was there. But at the end of the day, he gave us a really good letter of recommendation as a team. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They handled the building effectively and efficiently. They got the systems back online with, contacting Con Ed, contacting electrical companies to get everyone involved. Having his backing on that, really gave me a sense of pride, right? Because having, director of engineering, come and say, hey, you guys did a wonderful job. Really impressed. You handled it really well. And I was fairly new in the business at the time. I was like, I could do this. He gave me that a little bit of encouragement. So, and just from that alone, all the other incidents that had leaks all over the place, random times, you got to come in and you got to handle it right away. And it's under that pressure, you really know what you're made of. And handling it really well is what I take pride in. And
right. It's always the inopportune moments, right? It's always when you have to,
we don't have the timeline on your side, right? You got to get it done. You got to get it back up ASAP.
And that's character. That's character building, and that's character building, and that shows that you care, and like that's super amazing. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. How about you, Adam? What was your proudest moment?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I can't even. I mean, I've done a lot of things. Like I used to work. Like I said, I used to work as an HVAC contractor. Some of my proudest moments are really helping people that really needed help. Like going into buildings that didn't have heat, and really like seeing the folks there that were, really suffering because of it. And it was super cold outside, and it was everyone's wearing blankets, and going in there and saying, okay, well, I'm going to come in, I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to stay here all night until you have heat. Nice. That was some of my proudest moments. Is really doing that. And there was times where I was out like 2 a.m, making sure people had heat in the middle of winter.
Always in the middle of the night, right? It's always in the middle of the night. It's always in the middle of the night.
It is. It's Christmas Eve at like 2 a.m. That's when things go bad.
It's always in the middle of the night.
That is when things break.
If people need you the most, it's always in the middle of the night, by the way.
But the satisfaction is amazing. Like, when you get when someone says to you, hey, thank you so much. Like you really, really did, help me out. And that's what I loved about working in the service industry, and is really helping people. And I've always loved that.
Wow. Great response. Very
and
nice.
I like that both of those are so tangible. Like you have an issue, you're able to, you dig in, you're able to resolve it. Obviously, you have people excited about you resolving it. It's always good to get feedback like that, appreciation. Yeah. But one thing that I just love about this field is it's so tangible. I don't know that I could do, derivative training or something like that, where it's like there's no connection to like the real world, right? Yeah. Sorry to all the derivative traders that listen to our podcast, and I understand your building is a landmark building. Which we, work with a lot of different landmark buildings. I wonder, as an operator, what does that mean to you, and how has that impacted any of your work?
It's the only thing I have about landmark buildings. My property is a landmark building, and I asked my property manager, I said, what troubles do we have with being a landmark property? And he goes, the delays. Anything that goes through DOB. For our exterior of our property also has to go to the LPC, the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Right. Yeah. And it won't get blessed until they bless it, right? Yeah. They won't do any work until whatever they say it goes. So having them oversee all the projects that we go through externally, they take their time. They're in no rush. So everything's just a time delay with them. Yeah. Like anything else, it's just a time delay. But they have a lot of power when it comes to landmark properties.
Yeah.
I just thought that was very interesting to learn at least a little bit about that.
And that's a challenge too, like, trying to, sort of implement an efficiency measure. Let's say that's external, right? Like let's say window upgrades or whatever.
Correct.
Like you have to, sort of be within the guidelines. I know, like, my old days working in Passive House, that was always an issue in some landmark districts. Like, how do we get a window that actually meets landmark requirements? And we want to do the right thing. We want to, increase efficiency.
You want it, yeah.
But how do we do it, right? And it's that give and take. It's that conversation, like having that conversation, talking to them, having them understand what you're trying to do. I think that's again, going back to your point where you really need to be able to understand how to converse with people, how to really talk through all this. That's one of the skill sets that that does really help out a lot,
And it was interesting because when you said going back to that, when you said the thing about, when your daytime guys have to be able to communicate effectively with tenants, and you don't think about that as a part of the job description for a building operator, right? You think about people in the engine room or whatever, like changing valves or whatever. But that I talk about that with commissioning all the time. Like, you have to understand the equipment, but you also have to convince the engineer of the problem and the contractor and the owner, and have everybody come together and figure out, maybe, Landmarks has an issue with the way that it is, or maybe there's, 6 different kind of ways to overlay where there's a cost associated with the problem, and there's a cost to fix it. There's a, tension with the controls contractor that would have to provide the solution, or whatever. There's sometimes some personalities you have to navigate.
Very good. Yeah. You said it best. Personalities. Personalities.
And what are you seeing as, from, speaking of different personalities and different people you have to communicate, are you getting kind of top-down requests from upper management about energy efficiency, or like, you have to meet these certain energy targets, or why am I seeing on the BMS that the equipment's running at night? Or is anyone asking you those kinds of questions?
So my chief is always on top of that, right? We always want to look good in management's eyes. So at the end of the day, we kind of stay on top of those things. And they might refer to us, say, hey, where can we make upgrades? Like, where do you recommend, or what do you suggest where we could cut back, upgrade certain things? And we came up with the lighting in our property because we have a lot of dated lighting fixtures. Upgrading a lot of it to LEDs would definitely add some savings to the cost of energy efficiency, as well as I know I was touching base with Adam earlier about EC motors, and we have over 400 fan power boxes in our building alone with all the tenants that we have. So the idea is when the tenants turn over to new leases to have EC motors on our fan power boxes compared to the traditional ones we have now, just to save costs, down the line. So, giving us that feedback to the management, they were very helpful to draft something up and give it to corporate, because we all work in unison. It's a team that really runs the property, and they refer to us like we refer to them, and we just bounce ideas back and forth.
And that's impressive to be able to, for you to be there, on the ground floor, really identifying these, these opportunities and saying, hey, we should do this, we should do that. It shows a really good, solid understanding of not only, just sort of efficiency, but just, like all the opportunities that you can have to improve, your building. So,
correct.
I think that's great. That's the goal. Like that, from a training perspective, that's what we want to see, from operations staff, is really want them to not only be able to operate the building, but to really say, hey, what about this? Like I think we could do something here. I think we could do something there. And that's where it really transforms. Yeah.
Create that plan before turnover happens. So this is the list of upgrades I can do.
There you go.
Otherwise, you're just going to replace in kind if there's any issues or leave it. And so
that's what I've seen from time to time. We've all seen it in this industry. They just replace what we already existingly had, right? They just make it look different, but it does the exact same thing. But efficiency wise, upgrading everything to something new where it's going to save us some money, make us look good. I'm all about that. And come up with them for management asking us for our ideas. Here we come up with the ideas, and we brainstorm constantly. So that's one of them, one of the many that we have, I guess, in the future of upgrades. Yeah.
That's why you're still at SL Green, I guess. Been there for
now. Trying to move up.
That's awesome. So we always like to ask this: when we have you back on the podcast in 5 years, what do you think we'll be talking about then?
In 5 years, I think energy efficiency will be the primary target, if you ask me. I think we're going to have to find out some different and unique ways of saving money. But when that comes, we're going to see a whole new line of technology as well. I think Adam could definitely relate to this. I'm seeing it now with controls alone. It's definitely upgrading, and for the sense of energy savings. In training, it will be an initiative at that point for us to understand and how to operate and how to diagnose any issues that go down. But at the end of the day, I think we'll be talking about energy efficiency again in 5 years, no doubt in my mind.
You think we'll still have some pneumatics out there?
No, absolutely not. Oh my God, that's one of the worst. Okay, that's one of the worst for energy efficiency. That's all I'm going to say. For energy efficiency is the worst. But it could be in certain areas, but I don't think it'll be updated to anything new. Pneumatics.
Adam, what about you?
I'm hoping we solve the skilled trades gap. I'm hoping we're not talking about, a lack of qualified workforce or workforce that's really interested in getting into the field. So I'm hoping, in the next 5 years, we have folks that are really interested in getting, starting a career and starting a, very good career in the skilled trades. And that are really excited about new technology because, it's going to happen. We're going to be, we're transferring to new technology. It's always going to happen. But I'm hoping we have a good workforce that's there that, and I think we will. I honestly think there's a lot of great efforts that are happening across the country in New York State and New York City that are really trying to, really solve this. And I think we'll see success, and I think we'll have, really good building operations and maintenance. Not that we don't have it now, but I think we'll have, a bunch of people that are really interested in really moving buildings forward.
I like that response. I do. I second that one. I think you're right, Adam. I think that's something that we should strive for. As an industry, we should strive for that because it makes sense. It really does.
I mean, Jonathan, to your point, like you went in, you have gone up the ranks, you've really developed a really awesome career for yourself.
Thank you.
And there are tons of opportunities like that across New York City and beyond.
Right.
And seeing that as a real opportunity and not just sort of like a, old engineers game or something like that.
Time for a change, right? It's always time. None stays the same forever.
Yeah.
And it's totally different now. Like you have, if you're really into computers, if you're into new technology, like everything's becoming more automated and more digital. So, you really do need that background, or if you have that interest, I mean, this is a viable career that you can really start to say, hey, it makes sense. It's, not to say you don't have to turn the wrench anymore or, or do this. But, more of it's going to become more automated, more computer based. So if you have an interest in that, have a good understanding, I think, it could be a very good, and viable career.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being on the podcast. This was great.
Yeah.
Oh, pleasure.
It's amazing.
Looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah, awesome.
Hopefully earlier than 5 years.
Yeah, we don't have to wait the full 5 years.
Exactly. Hopefully earlier than 5 years. This was a learning experience. I loved it.
Thank you for listening, and thanks to Kelly, Adam, and Jonathan for the great conversation. For more info, check out the show notes at swinter.com/podcast. That's swinter.com/podcast. Buildings and Beyond is brought to you by Stephen Winter Associates. Our goal is to improve the built environment. If you're on a similar mission, consider checking out our careers page. We currently have over 30 openings across our DC, New York, Connecticut, and Boston offices. If you have ideas for episodes, suggestions for guests, or general feedback about the Buildings and Beyond podcast, we would love to hear it. You can get in touch by emailing podcast@swinter.com. Again, podcast@swinter.com. Thanks for listening.